In the small town of Pembroke, Wales, an oppressive fog often settled over the streets, giving it an air of mystery. But even on the clearest days, one thing remained impenetrable: the bond between two twins, June and Jennifer Gibbons. Living in an old brick house, they had an ordinary room with two beds side by side, adorned with ordinary sheets. However, there was something utterly unordinary about them. Whenever the two were seen, they were always together, eerily inseparable, their lips moving in a silent conversation that only they understood. Whispers spread through the town about their secret language. Some said it was a form of twin telepathy. Others believed it was something darker. Neighbors often watched from their windows as the twins walked past, heads close together, murmuring to each other. The air around them seemed heavier, charged. The fog, which seemed like any other to outsiders, was believed by locals to thicken when the twins were near, as if even nature itself was wary of their secret bond. Sarah, a young teacher new to Pembroke, had heard hushed stories of the Gibbons twins, but she paid them no mind. She had her struggles, a recent heartbreak, the challenge of adapting to a new school, and the weight of leaving her family behind in London. With her heart-shaped face, curious blue eyes, and ever-present diary, Sarah was seen as an oddity, much like the twins. One day, Sarah found June and Jennifer in the school library, engrossed in their world. Fascinated, she approached them, attempting to break through their barrier. To her surprise, June responded, albeit in a soft, hesitant voice. "We write stories too." Sarah's intrigue grew. She thought if she could understand them, she could find a place in this strange, foggy town. June shared snippets of her writing with Sarah, tales of crime and despair. But as days turned into weeks, Sarah began to notice the lines between fiction and reality blurring. The twin stories bore eerie similarities to incidents in town. A stolen bike, a fire, and more, all seemed to be predicted by the twins' tales. Sarah's connection to them deepened, and she became our eyes and ears, the bridge between the twins' world and ours. Through her diary entries, we gained insight into the unfolding mystery. While she was drawn to their world, we, the audience, began to fear for her. What if she got too close? The town of Pembroke was not one known for its mysteries. The most significant event was the annual fair, but recently, there had been an unsettling number of incidents. Small acts of vandalism escalated to thefts, and then fires. Whispers of the curse of the twins became louder, drowning the town in a blanket of fear. Sarah, though worried, was also deeply intrigued. Her diary entries reflected her internal conflict. The twins' stories eerily predict these events, but can it be mere coincidence? Their tales are dark, yes, but could they be the masterminds behind these crimes? One evening, Sarah was invited by the twins to their home, an opportunity she couldn't resist. The house was unusually silent. The only sound was the synchronized breathing of the twins and the faint whisper of their secret language, drifting from room to room. In the twins' bedroom, Sarah noticed a collection of notebooks, filled cover to cover with stories, some written by June, others by Jennifer. The tales were eerily prophetic, detailing events days before they happened. As Sarah skimmed through the pages, her eyes caught a recent entry. "The school will burn, and the town will know our pain." A chilling breeze seeped through the window, making Sarah shiver. As she turned to leave, the door creaked closed, leaving her trapped with the twins. Their eyes bore into hers, filled with a haunting intensity. The silence was deafening, save for their synchronized heartbeats echoing in the dimly lit room. Sarah's heart raced, her breath shallow. She felt the weight of their gaze, the unspoken threat that hung in the air. It was as if they were testing her, seeing how much she knew, how deep she delved into their secrets. A knock on the door broke the spell. Their mother, unaware of the tension, called them down for dinner. The door swung open, but the twins remained still, their eyes never leaving Sarah's. She rushed out, the ominous feeling of being watched lingering long after. The feeling of being prey in a game she didn't understand. A game that was far from over. Despite the unsettling atmosphere of the evening at the twins' house, Sarah's journalistic instinct couldn't let it go. Every night, she would replay the events, trying to decipher the twins' intentions and the meaning behind their stories. Were they mere fantasies or ominous premonitions? Late one evening, Sarah sat in her study, her room dimly lit by a single lamp. She began to hear faint whispers, a language she couldn't recognize. Curious, she followed the sound, leading her to the radio. It was tuned to a frequency filled with static, but amidst the chaos, she could discern the twins' unique language. How was this possible? On a hunch, Sarah grabbed one of the notebooks she had borrowed from the twins' room and started to transcribe the strange broadcast. Word by word, she deciphered their conversation. "They cannot know our secret. She is getting too close," one voice whispered. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Were they watching her? How did they get on this frequency? And who were they warning about her investigations? At that moment, a cold draft blew through her room, extinguishing the lamp. She was plunged into darkness. The familiar surroundings of her study felt alien and menacing. The whispers grew louder and closer, as if the twins were right there with her. Gathering her courage, Sarah lit a match, illuminating the room. The sight that met her eyes was bone-chilling. Her windows were fogged up, and on them were written words in the twins' distinct handwriting. "You shouldn't have listened." Frozen in fear, Sarah could only watch as the words slowly disappeared, the moisture on the window evaporating, leaving no trace of the ominous message. The next morning, she found another notebook on her doorstep. It was filled with stories of events yet to happen. Events that were darker and more violent than the previous ones. As Sarah leafed through the pages, one story stood out. It was about her, and it didn't end well. The boundaries between reality and the unknown were blurring for Sarah. The more she delved into the twins' world, the more the lines of reality began to twist and turn, leaving her unsure of what was real and what was a figment of her imagination. Sarah's days became a cacophony of haunting visions and eerie sounds. She began seeing June and Jennifer everywhere she went. They would be sitting in a cafe she entered, staring at her from across the street, or standing behind her in a reflection. Every time she approached them, they would vanish like smoke. The familiarity of her town started to distort. The cafe she loved frequenting with her friends had suddenly turned into an old abandoned structure, its windows shattered, covered in years of dirt and neglect. Her favorite park, where she often sat reading, was now just a barren land with a single old swing, squeaking hauntingly in the wind. The once comforting sounds of children's laughter now echoed through the empty streets, growing distorted and sounding sinister. Sarah's own home began to betray her. Rooms she didn't remember existed appeared out of nowhere. Doors she had never seen before were now locked with no keys in sight. Familiar items started behaving unusually. Her coffee machine would start brewing on its own, and her television would flip channels sporadically, showing scenes of the twins' past misdemeanors, their crimes, and their lives in the institution. One evening, as Sarah sat down to have dinner, she took a bite of her food only to taste the metallic tinge of blood. Startled, she looked down to see her plate filled with raw meat and maggots. Gagging, she threw the plate away, only to find it back in its place, the food perfectly normal. Was she losing her mind? A particularly unsettling event was when she received a package. Tearing it open, she found a doll that bore an uncanny resemblance to her, but with its eyes sewn shut. Attached was a note in the twins' handwriting. "See no evil." The world around Sarah was no longer what it seemed. Everything that was once familiar had taken a dark, twisted turn. The twins, with their mysterious, unknown language and their unsettling presence, had managed to merge their reality with hers, making her question her sanity. Sarah's nights became restless. Sleep seemed like a luxury she could no longer afford. Each time she closed her eyes, she'd hear the indistinct whisperings of the twins, their secret language reaching out from the shadows. Though she couldn't understand the words, their intent was clear. They were discussing her. One evening, after days without proper sleep, Sarah decided to record the sounds in her room. She set up her phone and let it record all night. The next morning, she played the recording, expecting to hear her restlessness. Instead, there was the unmistakable chatter of the twins. But as she strained to catch any decipherable words, she heard a clear message amidst the foreign tongue. "One must go." Chills ran down Sarah's spine. That phrase had been linked to the twins' history. Was this their way of hinting that she was to meet the same fate as Jennifer? Sarah began noticing peculiar things. Now and then, out of her eye, she'd see a shadowy figure. At first, she thought it was one of the twins, but it was different, more ethereal, its form constantly shifting and shimmering. It always lurked just out of her full view, evading her every time she tried to focus on it. One rainy night, as thunder boomed outside, she saw the figure again. It stood in her room, its shape less distinct, but its eyes, two glowing orbs, staring intently at her. Terrified, Sarah reached out to turn on the light. As illumination filled the room, the figure vanished, but the room temperature had dropped significantly. Sarah realized that while the twins were very much alive in her reality, there was something else, an entity that wasn't bound by life or death. It seemed to be fueled by the twins' powerful emotions and their unresolved history. It was this entity that was ensuring their story wasn't forgotten, weaving its supernatural presence sparingly into Sarah's life, making her dread every passing moment. The entity seemed to take pleasure in catching Sarah at her weakest moments. She became aware of a pattern. Every time she was alone or felt particularly vulnerable, it made its presence known. One evening, after an exhausting day, Sarah decided to take a long, relaxing bath. The bathroom was filled with steam from the hot water, and the mellow scent of lavender filled the air. Closing her eyes, Sarah tried to forget the eerie occurrences and find solace in the warmth of the water. Just as she began to drift into a relaxed state, she felt a sudden drop in temperature. Opening her eyes, the steam had cleared inexplicably fast. On the foggy mirror, written in a childlike script, were the words, "You're next." Sarah's heart raced. She quickly got out of the tub, wrapping herself in a towel. She had never felt so exposed and vulnerable. A few nights later, Sarah was watching TV, trying to lose herself in a comedy to lighten her spirits. Laughing at a particularly funny scene, she didn't notice the room growing colder until her breath formed a mist in front of her. Looking down, she saw her cup of tea, once steaming hot, now filled with ice. The TV's laughter track took on a sinister tone, morphing into the twins' giggles. One morning, waking up groggy from another restless night, Sarah stumbled to her kitchen for a coffee. She froze when she noticed every single chair from her dining table stacked in a precarious tower in the middle of her living room. It was a clear message. The entity could manipulate her surroundings at will. But the most unnerving incident occurred when Sarah was on a phone call with a friend. Speaking animatedly, she suddenly heard the now familiar whisper of the twins interrupting her conversation. Her friend couldn't hear it, but for Sarah, it was deafening. The twins were reciting something, over and over, their voices overlapping. Straining to understand, she finally made out the phrase, "One must stay, one must go." These vulnerable moments were a constant reminder to Sarah that she was never truly alone. The entity, Or perhaps the lingering spirits of the twins was always watching, always waiting for the right moment to instill fear. Desperate to find a solution, Sarah sought the assistance of a renowned psychic named Madame Elara. Elara, with her piercing blue eyes and an air of mystery around her, agreed to conduct a séance in Sarah's home. As they sat around a dimly lit table, Elara began to chant in an ancient tongue, her voice rising and falling in a haunting melody. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to dance and twist on the walls. Suddenly, the room was filled with the twins' whispers, their voices echoing and overlapping, creating a cacophony of eerie sounds. Elara, with a look of intense concentration, demanded, "Why are you here? What do you want?" A chilling silence filled the room before a voice, clear and distinct, responded, "Justice." Images began to flash before Sarah's eyes, memories not her own. She saw the twins in their youth, laughing and playing, their bond unbreakable. Then, she saw them as teenagers, misunderstood and isolated from the world, retreating into their secret language. Their crimes were minor acts of rebellion that spiraled out of control. The dark pact they made, that one must die so the other could live. And finally, she saw their last moments, Jennifer's life slipping away as June watched in silent horror. It became clear that their souls were trapped, bound together by their pact, unable to move on. Jennifer's spirit, filled with resentment, believed that June had somehow betrayed her, leading to her early demise. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, pleaded, "How can I help you find peace?" The whispering voice responded, "Tell our story. Let the world know the truth." With that, the room returned to its normal temperature, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Elara, looking drained but relieved, said, "They've been heard. It's up to you now." Sarah, realizing the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders, nodded. "I'll tell their story. I'll ensure their memories live on." Sarah began documenting the twins' story. She delved deeper into their lives, piecing together the mystery surrounding them. While she managed to unravel many of their secrets, certain details remained elusive. Why did the twins choose a life of crime? How did their secret language truly develop? What were the final words they whispered to each other before Jennifer's sudden death? As the tale spread, these unanswered questions captivated the imagination of those who heard it. Communities online and offline were buzzing with theories and interpretations. Some believed there were supernatural forces at play, guiding the twins towards their tragic fate. Others felt it was a sad tale of societal rejection and the intense bond between siblings. As time went on, the twins' home became a place of pilgrimage for those enthralled by their story. People from all over would visit, hoping to find some clue or sign that would shed light on the enigma of the silent twins. Even Sarah, who was the closest to uncovering the truth, would often find herself lying awake at night, haunted by the mysteries that the twins left behind. Every creak of her house, every whisper of the wind, seemed to pose another question, a puzzle longing to be solved. And though the twins had found some semblance of peace, the world they left behind remained filled with intrigue and wonder, forever seeking answers to questions that may never be fully understood. Sarah's documentary was well received, earning her awards and accolades. But it was the lingering questions and mysteries that made the tale of the silent twins so compelling to the masses. The story had an eerie, haunting quality, leaving everyone who heard it with a chill down their spine. One evening, as Sarah was reviewing some old tapes, she stumbled upon an unused interview. The footage was grainy, but it was the twins, locked in one of their intense private conversations. She hadn't seen this before. How had she missed it? She pressed play. Their unique language filled the room. But there was something different. The atmosphere around them felt charged. The tape ended with Jennifer turning towards the camera, her eyes glassy. A faint whisper. One must go, but both shall remain. Sarah felt a shiver. She played the tape again, hoping to make more sense of it. But this time, the tape was blank. No twins, no whisper, just static. Determined to find answers, Sarah revisited the hospital where Jennifer passed away. Records showed that on the night of Jennifer's death, some of the hospital staff reported hearing strange noises and feeling an unusual coldness in the air. Sarah's attempts to find answers only led to more questions. Was Jennifer's spirit still lingering, bound to June and the world of the living? Or had the bond between the twins created something entirely different, a force that neither life nor death could break? The silent twins story was no longer just a historical account. It had become a living legend. Sarah's journey was far from over, and she knew it. She had stepped into a narrative filled with unknowns, with an ending not yet written. As the years passed, the line between truth and fiction blurred. The twins' story became a modern ghost tale, whispered about in hushed tones during late-night gatherings and campfires. And Sarah, ever the storyteller, found herself both the narrator and a character in the ever-evolving narrative of the silent twins.